Let's make a miniature sprinkle explosion cake from polymer clay. And welcome to my channel, Notorious Crafts, where I make all things dollhouse miniature. Here are some of the supplies that I used, and I also have links to them down below in the description. I started out by rolling out some white clay in my clay pasta machine. I like starting off with lighter colors first so that the darker colors don't get mixed into the lighter ones. I use this clay cutter to cut out some circles of clay, and this is going to become the frosting layer in the cake. Then I started rolling out the different colors of clay. I did change the settings on the clay pasta machine to make these much thicker since this will be the cake layer. I only need one of each color. I use this really small circle cutter to cut out some holes in the center of each layer. And once I stack them on top of each other, this is where all the sprinkles will hide inside the cake. Now that all of these look like little donuts, I can start stacking them on top of each other. I'm starting off with the darker colors on the bottom and then adding a white layer in between each of the colors, since that is going to be the frosting of the cake. The shape of these also reminds me of the peach ring gummy candies, so now I started craving some gummy candies. I continued the same process until all of the layers were stacked on top of each other with the pastels on the very top. All of the sprinkles will hide inside this hole later on. I'm flattening out some of this pretty blue clay in my clay pasta machine, and this is going to be the outside layer of the cake. I trimmed down the blue clay so that it is nice and snug all around the cake when I wrap it. I smoothed out the outside layer of clay using a Q-tip and some rubbing alcohol, and this also removed any dust that was inside the clay. Now time to cut open the cake. This part always makes me nervous. I always end up cutting the cake unevenly, and then my cake slices end up lopsided. I'm getting better at it slowly. I think I do need to just measure it out, or maybe first draw a line around the cake and then cut it. But wow, look at those layers. I love how these colors turned out. Some of the layers on the inside circle are just a bit lumpy, so I'm just smoothing them out using this dot tool. Now it's time to add some texture inside of the cake. I'm going to use a toothpick, and I'm only applying it to the colorful layers since the white layer is frosting and it doesn't need holes in it. After using the toothpick to create some big holes, I am using a needle to create even smaller holes, and this will create a nice variety of texture. I'm using this silicone mold to create the most perfect looking frosting, and this is going to go on top of the cake. And I like using this mold because I can get nice uniform shapes on each of the pieces that I make. And I will bake this directly inside of the mold. After baking the pieces of frosting, I attached it to the piece of cake using some clay adhesive. It's important to use clay adhesive if you are attaching baked clay pieces to non-baked pieces. I still have not baked the entire piece of clay cake yet. I wanted to first make the pieces of frosting so that I could push them deep into the cake. Used a toothpick to remove any of the clay adhesive that came up through the sides. For the big piece of cake, I first arranged all of the little frosting pieces on top of the cake so that I made sure I had enough of the frosting pieces before I started attaching them with clay adhesive. And then I marked with a toothpick where each of the pieces are going to go, and then started attaching them with the clay adhesive. I continued that process until all of the frosting pieces were attached onto the main cake. Have any of you ever had a real sprinkle surprise cake one that you can actually eat? I've never had one, but I've seen tons of videos of them on Instagram and on YouTube, and I've always wanted one in real life to actually eat. They just look so cool when you cut them open and all the sprinkles explode out of it. One day I'll have one for my actual birthday, but for now I'll make this miniature clay one. And I placed it in the oven to bake so that it can harden. And after the cake was done baking, I took it out and let it cool for a little bit, and I absolutely love how it turned out. I really like the color of these layers. I'm going to use one of these wooden circles as my cake stand, and I'm going to paint it a gloss white, and my cake will go on top of this. And now it's time to start preparing the sprinkles that will be hiding inside of the cake. I have these really tiny miniature glass colorful balls, and these are great to use as sprinkles. I'm pouring all of the tiny colorful balls into a container, and then I'm also adding in some of these heart-shaped sprinkles. These are made from clay. I'm picking out all of the blue, pink, and purple ones since that will match the inside of my clay cake layer colors. I put a small piece of tape on the bottom of the cake so that the sprinkles would not come out. Once I poured them in, I realized I should have not cut a hole into the very bottom layer of the cake. If you do end up making this cake, just remember the very top layer and the very bottom layer will not have any holes in it. Now I'm adding this small piece of cake on top of the larger one, and the piece of tape is actually helping hold it in so that the sprinkles don't come pouring out. Now let's cut this cake open so that we can reveal the sprinkle surprise inside. Let me know what you guys think of this miniature clay sprinkle surprise cake. This was such a fun cake to make for me, and of course I love the sprinkle explosion at the very end. I also really like how all of the colors come together, with combining some of the cool colors as well as some light pastels. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.